Okay, let's go to Haiti, please. We have, if we could put Ramesh and Bruno up on the screen. Excellent. I'm sure they'll be up on the screen in a second. Can you hear, Ramesh and Bruno, can you hear us?
We can hear you clearly. Can you hear us?
Perfectly. First of all, thank you very much for your patience. I think as my answer to Stefano, we can actually are able as a system to focus on more than one crisis at a time. So we think it's very important to keep Haiti in the headlines. So I will turn, first of all, I think to you, Ramesh, who are down finishing up your visit, and then we'll turn to Bruno. Ramesh, please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Stefan, also for keeping Haiti in the news amidst all these other crises. The purpose of my mission here over the last few days was basically to assess the humanitarian situation following the impact of the earthquake which took place on the 14th of August. Bruno and I had the opportunity to visit. We traveled by air to the affected area, which is the southern part of the island. And we met with the local communities there. We met with our partners, as well as the local authorities there. And indeed, what we witnessed was a terrible situation. In many places, 7 out of 10 homes or buildings have been utterly destroyed. Schools have been destroyed, health centers, facilities. Thousands of people who have been left displaced. 60,000 homes have been destroyed. So that's 60,000 families now displaced. And we are just entering into the hurricane season. So we need to desperately support for that. In addition to that, access to health, access to water and sanitation, shelter, education, protection. These are all the issues that many people raise into the critical needs. Haiti, obviously, as you know, suffered year after year from disasters and deep poverty. It's the 170th on the Human Development Index right now. This just further cripples the civilian population there. And as a result, we launched yesterday, together with the Prime Minister here, an appeal to address the most vulnerable people affected by the which is about 500,000 people. We're asking for $187 million to support them. We already have the capacity on the ground, so it's really an issue of resources. I should also take this opportunity to say that the earthquake happened on the 14th of August. On that day itself, on the 15th of August, UNDAC, the UN Disaster Assessment Coordination System, which hosts, deployed to Haiti, together with urban search and rescue teams from our partners from the US, from many Latin American countries, as well as smaller teams from Europe. So we are on the ground there coordinating the assistance. The US is obviously providing a great deal of assistance through airlift and air supports for the most hard-to-reach areas. Many of these areas cannot be reached by road. So Haiti, as I mentioned, it really is undergoing a very difficult situation with respect to the earthquake, and that comes on top of the vulnerabilities that they have to endure as a result of disasters. Now, Bruno will speak more to it, but the second priority of the appeal is really to look at livelihoods and resilience. How do we learn the lessons from the past to make sure that humanitarian assistance really is just a band-aid, but we do need something a little bit more sustainable so that people of Haiti in future can absorb the shock of natural disasters, which obviously are going to happen more in a more increased fashion as a result of climate change. I'll hand it to Bruno. Thank you.
Bruno?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so thanks again for helping us to keep Haiti on the radar in spite of all the other priorities. This earthquake is yet another layer of complexity in Haiti to a very complex situation that has political elements, complex security situation. It's a deteriorating socio-economic situation. It's a difficult humanitarian situation. We are in the midst still of the COVID pandemic, and we are in the season. So what more to ask? On the humanitarian front, as Ramesh had said, in addition to the earthquake, we are facing a high level of humanitarian needs, and we had launched our humanitarian response plan earlier this year. And it's worth noting that the last disaster took place in 2016. Since then, there has been, for example, no hurricane. So the high needs are not linked to disasters. They are linked mostly to man-made crisis, the political situation, the political crisis, and the COVID crisis. Since June, to make it more complicated, since the 1st of June, there has been a very steep increase in gang violence and gang clashes in Port-au-Prince over the past few months. And this has affected 1/3 of the population of the greater metropolitan Port-au-Prince area, which is huge, with 20,000 people internally displaced and 7,000 that are displaced in IDP camps inside Port-au-Prince, living in very bad conditions. So in addition to the request for funding and the broader request for broader humanitarian need, we also need support for those displaced people, and we are working hard with the government to try to relocate them. For the earthquake, it will be critical, as many of you have already written about, to take into account the lessons from previous disasters in Haiti, in particular the devastating 2010 disaster. And in a few words, in my words, it would mean we support and we respect national leadership. And so far, the national leadership has been very strong in the response at the highest level, but also at the operational level with the civil protection, the Department of Civil Protection. And we see, I have been involved many years in many crises in Haiti, and I see the progress they have made over the years, and they are really doing an excellent job in coordinating the relief efforts. We will need to support all actors. We need to support and to respect. The word respect is very important. Respect the coordination arrangement that have been put in place by the national authorities at national, departmental, and local level. We will need to support local partners. They are best placed. Local partners, local structures, local systems. We will need to rely a lot on the excellent Haitian expertise, Haitian capacity, Haitian knowledge. And finally, we will need, wherever it's possible, wherever it exists, to purchase local product and to support the local economy for a faster economic recovery. It will also be very important to have a seamless transition between the immediate efforts, as Ramesh had said, and the longer-term recovery and reconstruction efforts. And we are very pleased to know that the government, as part of their strong leadership, has already launched comprehensive needs assessment of the reconstruction needs. This is ongoing. They have a very ambitious timeline to get through this as soon as possible, and they have requested joint support from the United Nations, the World Bank, the European Union, and other partners such as the Inter-American Development Bank will also join. So in a couple of weeks, we should have a full evaluation of the needs, the reconstruction needs, and a reconstruction framework. Initial estimates by the World Bank, it's very initial estimates of the physical damages are above $1 billion. These are initial estimates. Finally, I would like to make a more general point on aid in Haiti. A lot of the aid, the foreign aid in Haiti, is often going to deal with crisis, to deal with symptoms, to deal with the manifestation of problems. And this is the sad story of the lack of impact of development in Haiti. Haiti is still going down the chain in terms of Human Development Index, for example, and the sad story of what we call development effectiveness in Haiti. So it's absolutely critical when dealing with Haiti that we tackle the causes of those crises. So the structural obstacles. And some of them are very deep-rooted in Haiti, and I like to call it guardian knots of Haiti. Without tackling them, we will be there in a very long time doing the exact same thing. When it comes to disaster, for example, and Haiti is often struck, is often facing disasters, 24, 2010, 2016. So Haiti is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. But it's possible to avoid disasters. Disasters are not natural. We always say natural disasters. It's not natural to say natural disaster because there is nothing natural in a disaster. What is natural is the hazard. And if the hazard is nothing is done to protect a country, to prepare a country to face hazard, then we will have disaster. And among those measures, you have having building codes and enforcing building codes. You have zoning, you have planning, you have what we call in French aménagement du territoire. You have a lot of action that needs to be taken to prepare countries to resist, to absorb shocks. And Haiti, in this regard, has not done a very good job, nor its international partners. Too much is going in Haiti to respond and too little to avoid disasters. So yet, this is another opportunity for the Haitian leadership, the Haitian people and their international partners to put disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation at the very top of the political agenda in Haiti and the development agenda, so that next time there is a natural hazard in the next few years, instead of massive loss of life, massive impact on the GDP of the country, massive impact on human development, Haiti, like some of its neighbors, can sustain those natural hazards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Bruno. We'll take your questions. Michelle Nichols, Reuters.
Hi, thank you so much for this briefing. And apologies if I missed that earlier. What's the sort of funding situation? How much more money is needed? Are you going to need to send in more UN staff to help deal with this? Are you getting what you need?
Thanks. Thanks very much for that, Nicole. So the appeal has just been launched for the earthquake response, which is 187 million, and obviously that needs to be funded in full. But as Bruno mentioned, there was an earlier humanitarian response plan that was launched at the beginning of the year for the humanitarian situation in Haiti that was existing before the earthquake. That is about 30% funded. So we are, perhaps it's a little bit more than 30% funded, but we're already almost in September of the year. So desperately needed funding there, because the one thing we certainly don't want to do is to reprogram funding that we have for those vulnerable populations for the earthquake population, because it just, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and at the end of the day, there's going to be an increased vulnerability throughout the country.
And sorry, again, apologies. I'm trying to juggle a few things here as well. The COVID situation, how many, are you getting enough vaccines? We've heard a lot about the dire situation in places like Myanmar. What's the situation in Haiti?
So Haiti last year was largely spared from COVID during in 2020. We had a wave 2 during the spring that was not too serious either. Now we are waiting. We are hoping that the Delta variant will not come in. But so far Haiti has been largely spared from COVID. In terms of the vaccination, Haiti until recently was in the list of the 5 last countries who had not yet received or started any national vaccination program. This has now changed. There was a US donation of 500,000 of Moderna vaccine through the COVAX mechanism a few weeks ago, and vaccination campaign has now started and is taking up speed. And then further donation through COVAX and direct donation by the US of Pfizer vaccine with large amounts is underway. So it's picking up steam. We are not where, the country is not yet where it could be, but we are in the right direction.
Beitul?
Thank you very much for the briefing. We appreciate. Just a quick follow-up on Michelle's. Thank you very much for the briefing. We really appreciate that. Quick follow-up on Michelle's question. Do you have any concerns about the spread of coronavirus and then not getting able to enough vaccine and not getting able to enough humanitarian aid would have an impact and increase the spread of the virus? Thank you.
Well, as I said, so far, Haiti has been largely spared from COVID. So COVID is a concern. We are in high alert. The UN is doing everything it can to support the government to accelerate the national vaccination campaign. But in the list of priorities right now, which, as I said at the beginning, is very, very long, COVID is one factor among many. And as I said, it's very important to, if you look at the numbers, the COVID numbers in Haiti so far, they are relatively mild.
Thank you. Stefano, and then we'll come back to Michelle.
Yes, my question is...
Can you introduce yourself, Stefano?
Oh, yes, Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. I have a question about how the recent killing of the president of Haiti is affecting now this rescue operation on Haiti and the situation of help. What I'm trying to say is this. The world see how the Haiti government, the dysfunction, somebody saying that he was killed because he was trying to fight corruption. Somebody else say that he was killed because corruption. Whatever the international situation is that he died for, if it was an international coup or whatever, how this affecting the trust, that now the help that the institutions want to do toward Haiti. I mean, is Haiti, with this money that's coming in, is really helping Haiti, or because the government, the dysfunction of the government will make the situation even worse than it is?
So the only thing, thank you for the question. The only thing I can say in this regard is that the killing of the president in July, it's not having an impact on the response. The current government in place, as I said during my briefing, is exerting a strong leadership in the response, including at the highest political level with the Prime Minister, who is really into the response and really ensuring that the lessons from 2010 are applied and so on and so forth. And then at the ministerial, all the state institutions have been put to work, including the Departments of Civil Protection. So there is no really an impact on the response. The fundamental issues in Haiti of impunity, corruption, and so on and so forth, they were there before, they are here now, and they will stay for a while. So that's about tackling those Gordian knots. But in the immediate, there is not really an impact on the response.
If I can perhaps just add to that, as you may know, just south of Port-au-Prince, you have routes that are controlled by armed gangs. And getting access to them has been very difficult. And in this particular response, the government was instrumental in negotiating open access through those routes for our organizations to bring trucks through. So from my discussions here with Bruno and others, the leadership that the government has provided on that has been very strong. What the government does need, obviously, are resources so that its capacity can be strengthened, especially in these hard-to-reach areas. And so I think that's something that we need to support strongly. Thank you.
Michelle?
Sorry, my question kind of plays into what you just mentioned, how the security situation and the armed gangs, and how much is that hindering your work?
So in terms of the earthquake response, as Ramesh just said, the main access to the south is what we call National Road number 2, which is passing through a gang-controlled area and an area called Martissan. So it's under gang control, especially since the 1st of June. The government has successfully managed to negotiate access during daytime to allow the safe passage of convoys, and so far it's working. In parallel, the UN has also established a maritime system with barges to allow for the transport of trucks by sea. And then the UN has one helicopter, but with the response, there is now a fleet of helicopters also to allow transport. There are also security issues and tensions in the affected areas, and you might have heard about that. When aid is not arriving fast enough, then there is tension in communities. Now that aid is starting to arrive, including in far-to-reach areas, this should reduce. This should get better. And also, it's also a question of planning, coordinating with the local authorities, including at village level, with the elders, with religious authorities, to make sure that there is a well-organized distribution system from the arrival point of trucks, for example, to the end distribution points. So all this is being put in place and managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Bruno, Ramesh, thank you very much for taking the time. Ramesh, safe travels back to New York. Bruno, please come back maybe in a week or 10 days to give us an update. That would be great. And thank you both, and thank you for your patience.
Very happy, sir. Thank you.